Hi, I'm Kevin Hoyt, Platform Evangelist with Adobe. Welcome back to this series on RIA problems you never knew existed. Now this is a quickie but a goodie. It's about service versioning. How is service versioning a problem? We all version our code, right? Well, the problem with versioning our code that makes up the services versus versioning the service that is exposed via API to somebody else to use are two different things. And often, while the former is usually done, people put some sort of versioning system in place for the code of the service, they rarely think about what they're going to do when they want to release the next version of the service itself. How those people consuming that service will be impacted. Essentially, what happens to the composite service link in this chain when the earlier part of one of the atomic services changes? Right? This guy on the right is dependent on the guy on the left. So if he changes, then we could be in a world of hurt. And that's part of what we don't think about when we talk about versioning of the service as it's exposed through a public API. Now, I don't want to pick on any one technology. And again, I've said repeatedly throughout this series that there are a place and time for any given technology. But one of the biggest offenders in my book about, in this particular case, is Rails. Rails uses this world where, hey, give me your data model and I'll generate all this infrastructure for you. And that's great in certain circumstances. But what happens when our model changes? Well, no problem. I'll run the Rails framework again. It'll scaffold out my service and I'll be good to go. Yeah, but in SOA world, all those people out here who were using that original service just got a really nasty wake-up call. Wouldn't it be nice if you put some versioning in there for them to think about? So this is where the problem happens. Service endpoint, whether it be an atomic service or whether it be a composite service, consumed over some architecture, presumably an SOA environment, as an API to your infrastructure. This is really common in a kind of case of a business partner or a business-to-business type of transaction. Now, that API is being consumed by some other some other business on that who's requesting that service. Now, again, if you change your service, that means a change in the API, and the users who are eating that service are going to get a real nasty wake-up call. And again, it's kind of this weird trickle-down effect because they might have business partners that are using their service too, and so on and so on and so forth. So your one change may have this trickle-down effect where everybody gets a really nasty wake-up call. The best way to fix this is just to think about versioning not only your code that makes up the service first, but also think about versioning of the service. And it's really easy. Just throw a flag in there for version. Assume the latest and greatest, but add a flag if the end user, the consumer of that service, wants to continue to use the older version. They can specify that version flag and stay where they're at. Now, versioning your code and versioning out the service that is based on that code, how do you do that? Well, you can architect it a number of great ways, but I would suggest that one of the best ways is simply using Lifecycle Enterprise Suite, which allows you to actually version out the services that you provide. So that's service versioning, and that's the next chapter in our RIA problem series. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, I'm Kevin Hoyt.